Mr. Curry.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
All right, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item is the approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting of February 22.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Special reports, COVID vaccination clinic.
I just wanted to bring council up to date on where we are with regard to the vaccination clinics that are being held at the recreation center. Yesterday, Hilltop Pharmacy and the fire department were able to do another mass vaccination clinic, and there were about 1,200 people who received their first shots yesterday. Between the 3 weeks that Washington Hospital's been there, they have done an additional 1,700. So if you look at the first vaccination clinic held by Hilltop and what the hospital's been able to do, 5,100 people have been able to receive a vaccination as a result of the efforts over there. I got to give some credit to the Basketball Association. You know, it's been a little bit rough on them because they've been asked to move around their schedule and that, and they've been fairly accommodating. And we've also had some challenges as a result of them moving their schedules with open gyms and like yesterday, the track not being available. But when most people see the vaccination clinic and what's happening there, they've been pretty understanding. So the intention is, with regard to Washington Hospital, is they're slowly ramping up so that there will be additional vaccinations there. They'll very shortly be giving the second vaccination for Pfizer, and so we anticipate that the number of people being vaccinated will increase. So, anybody have any questions on?
Well, of the total, that isn't necessarily residents in Peters, correct?
No. The vaccination clinics that are held by Hilltop are open to everyone. The vaccination clinics that are being held by the Washington Area Hospital System are only for individuals in their service area, which is Washington County and Greene County. I will tell you, though, being there yesterday, there were quite a few people from Peters Township. Hilltop recognized where they were having this and tried to accommodate so that we could make sure that residents had some opportunity to get registered. So.
Do we know anything about what will be the next step to educate the teachers, to vaccinate the educating teachers?
The Pennsylvania Department of Health has assigned all of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines to teachers. They are going to be using the intermediate units, which in our case, the intermediate unit is located in California, PA, to do that. I don't know whether it's this week or next week. There'll be at least a few hundred teachers from Peters Township headed to California to get their vaccination. So.
The Cannon-McMillan school system actually had a on-site vaccination, so some of the districts might be handling it on their own too.
So.
Yeah, geographically, that doesn't sound particularly convenient.
Oh, that was the first thing out of my mouth. But it's a long way to travel. But to get a vaccination, I think people are more willing to do that.
All right.
But that's one thing even over here that we have seen. There are people who travel quite some distance to be able to get to the recreation center here to be able to get a vaccine. So.
In this instance, you didn't make an accolade to our fire chief.
Well, I would
efforts.
like to make an accolade not only to the fire chief but to the fire department. But to be quite honest with you, it's first and foremost Hilltop Pharmacy for making the vaccine available. And there were, just as there was the first time around, there were firemen there who were doing vaccinations and helping manage it. But you had all kind of township employees involved, for the Public Works Department, who sets it up, to the Recreation Department, people over at the rec center, there's a police officer there. So it was kind of like a team effort. So it went extremely well. That's one of the things that universally people commented about, is how well organized it was, and it ran like clockwork and on time. So people were appreciative of that.
Our thanks to everybody that was
Yeah,
involved.
absolutely. I was able to get a vaccine, and it was just very well organized.
Okay, anything else on
Except the
that?
music from the jazzercise was kind of loud.
It's a good thing you were there doing Zumba.
That's what it was, Zumba.
It's hard doing
Zumba,
Zumba while
jazzercise,
you're
is it
vaccinated.
different?
David, I don't know.
Question, Mr. Lauer? Do you want me to go to the microphone?
Probably works better to get it recorded.
Ron Books, 855 Bebont Road. Yesterday, I received a telephone call from a friend of mine who I've known since high school. He lives over in Cecil Township. And he got his first vaccination, of all places, in Allegheny County. Because he didn't know that there was access through Washington Hospital or through our community center. Are we doing any advertising?
We have sent out blasts through all of our email blast systems. Someone knows that there's vaccinations out there, because Washington Hospital System's overwhelmed with the registrations. In fact, one of the things that I would encourage people to do, and Washington Hospitals has addressed this themselves, and I think will resolve the problem. You know, there is no organized way to register for a vaccine. So people are registering at every location they can find. And what people have failed to do at times is, when they get the vaccine, is to cancel their other registrations. So Washington Hospital was having problems where people were sent a time and then nobody showed up. And it took them a while to figure out what was happening. And it's that people found vaccines elsewhere. So I think people know it's out there. I haven't run into anybody
I
yet.
would agree. I mean, Washington Hospital, I get emails from them all
Yeah.
the time. I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
You're sending out emails, there's been ads in the paper.
I know it's been in the almanac, and I know it's been in the
Everywhere.
OR.
Almanac,
It's been everywhere.
I just
there's
wondered if we've
websites.
gotten
I'm sure
anything into
JPA
the
said
local
it.
newspapers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there have.
There has been.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's even websites where it shows all the various places around and what the availability is. And, but the problem is, you have to be able to use a computer, and that's where a few people fell out.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so since we apparently have started at public comment, live audience comments are still under the COVID protocol, so comments can be emailed to Tom Gromick prior to the meeting, and we will read those at the meeting for the attention of council. So, Mr. Lauer, do we have?
We have one tonight, and it was submitted by Deborah Berger, and she lives at 110 Evans Drive. I would like to know if there's going to be any kind of vote or poll taken with the residents of Peters Township about this aquatic center. I do not feel that the opinions gathered in the past should dictate the future of this project. Facts and projections should be compiled and presented to the taxpayers of 2021, and the residents should have a way to vote yay or no to this project. I am personally not in favor of it for numerous reasons related to the proposed location in Rolling Hills Park. The park already feels like a parking lot. I also believe that Ms. Monica R. Merrill has made some very valid points that should be researched and discussed. Her community email for March 8th includes these lines. Council is also being asked to approve a list of contractors who have been pre-qualified to bid on the proposed aquatic center. Pre-qualifying contractors is premature, in my opinion. Council has not approved construction of this proposed amenity yet, and I don't think we can or should consider that vote before we know the details of any potential operating expenses and supposed revenues and how they will affect our township budget and your taxes long term. $296,000 to Kimball Broguette for design services so far on the proposed aquatic center. Paying this already for something that is not a definite plan, or is it? But thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion on this subject.
Okay, is there anything else? All right, seeing no other audience comments? Anything else? All right, unfinished business, there is none. New business, approval for reporting purposes of the Kill and Wilmot re-subdivision is shown on drawings prepared by Sawyer Engineering dated February 15th for Jeffrey and Catherine Wilmot and Brent and Lisa Killen.
This is just splitting a lot between the two properties.
Yeah,
right?
there's an unbuildable lot. They acquired it jointly. They're splitting it in half.
I make a motion that we approve for recording purposes the Kill and Wilmot re-subdivision as shown as drawings prepared by Sawyer Engineering dated February 15th, 2021 for Jeffrey and Cynthia Wilmot and Brent and Lisa Killen, subject to any requirements that were imposed by the Planning Commission.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is approval for recording purposes of the Schweitzer subdivision plan number 1 is shown on drawings prepared by Keystone Surveying and Mapping dated February 10, 2021 for Eric and Becky Schweitzer.
So this is a simple subdivision. Eric and Becky Schweitzer own a 5.4 acre parcel of land located at 175 Pleasant View Drive. The proposed subdivision creates one new lot, which their son intends to construct a home. The new lot is 3.17 acres. It will access Pleasant View Drive by means of a shared driveway. The remaining lot will be 2.31 acres. Like I say, what you're looking at is really a simple subdivision, and what that red line denotes is the line.
And there's a requirement in there that there's going to have to be a common maintenance agreement or shared agreement with regard to the driveway, correct?
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve for recording purposes the Schweitzer subdivision plan number 1 is shown on drawings prepared by Keystone Surveying and Mapping, Inc., dated February 10th, 2021 for Eric and Becky Schweitzer, contingent on the conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission, which it looks like most of them are complete except for the shared driveway agreement and DEP approval of required sewage facility planning module exemption.
Second.
Other discussion?
I do have a question, if you wouldn't mind. Just on clarifying the shared driveway and the agreement, once that's signed between the two people who are current owners, is that held in perpetuity? And whoever buys afterwards has to uphold that? Or is there something that has to then happen again? It has to be re-signed or...
No, that document would travel with the property. So it would be recorded and it would travel with the property.
It would bind to heirs, successors, and assigns.
But the township assumes no responsibility if they get into some sort of family feud or any issues.
No, that's a private matter.
Once people make that decision, it's on
Right.
them. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Successors and assigns, man.
That's right.
Okay. All right, other discussion in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approval of the Lutz Farm preliminary plan as shown in drawings prepared by C. Tebron Engineering dated February 12th for Ted Taylor Builders.
So as council will recall, this plan was presented to council back in September 28th, and at that time, council expressed two concerns regarding the plan as it was presented. One of them focused on a desire to have this plan that actually goes on either side of Thomas Road, that it be a T intersection. The engineer and the developer were able to go out and accomplish that in conjunction with the township engineer and the planning director. And there's adequate sight distance by doing that. So this is teed up the way council had asked.
Paul.
The other question was, what happens when this plan goes to get expanded? And the concern was that the way it was originally drawn, it created a situation where the only way to extend this plan was through this property. Who's this owned by? Yeah. So what has been done on the plan is that this right-of-way, it's a little bit strange how this configuration is, but this right-of-way has been done in such a way that it can actually go, the road can be extended in either direction, so that one property owner could not hold up another in terms of being able to develop their property.
Well, Paul, I feel much more comfortable about this particular alliteration of this plan than the previous version, so I'll make a motion that we approve the Lutz Farms preliminary plan as shown on drawings prepared by C-Tab and Engineering dated February 12, 2021 for Ted Taylor Builder, subject to compliance with all the conditions set forth in the Planning Commission approval.
Second. Any other discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry, but I have several questions. I agree with the gentleman to my left that this plan is a better depiction with the intersection. I had a couple questions. They talked about sidewalks, and I didn't notice any on the main entry road. Were those removed, or are they going to be there?
They'll be there.
Okay, as far as, okay, so the reason we wanted this aligned was for safety. This is not being proposed as an empty nester plan, so I'm presuming there could be families. My concern is a little bit for the entrance, and I wondered whether we were going to ask them to expand that a little bit for, if students are standing there, because I presume the school bus will not enter, should there be more of a wider entrance so that there would be a way for people to access the school bus without becoming an issue? And you don't have to answer. The other thing...
Well, I would say this is a preliminary plan, and maybe one of the things we need to look at is whether or not there needs to be a designated bus stop, by the time we get around to the final plan.
The other thing that I was thinking about, and this is based on my personal experience, the plan that I'm in is off of Bower Hill, and prior to when we first moved in, there was no street light. This particular section of the township is as dark, if not darker, than where that is. And I wondered, should we begin to be considering street lights
Absolutely.
for some of these?
That's actually a requirement of our streetlight policy.
Okay, in the new developments?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. The other thing I wondered about, there are lots here that are less than a quarter acre. Is there, how well are we upholding the footprint to lot size ratio?
We uphold it on every permit.
Because Just About Farms looks, as an example, it's the same conservation overlay. And those homes on that small acreage, to me, seem like they're overbuilt for the size. So are we going to be watching that, particularly on the acreage that's less than a quarter acre?
And it's handled and controlled by lot coverage, so.
Right, I understand it's supposed to be, that's why I'm asking.
A permit for a new home is not approved or issued unless it's under the lot coverage. So it's being enforced on every
Okay,
permit.
and you're following, and we follow up on that and make sure they're not overbuilding.
Yes.
Okay.
But, we had talked about having a workshop with council on zoning issues, and I think that's one of the things we want to talk with council about.
The last thing is about recreational space. I know that they allow the appropriate open space, but I didn't see anything in the recent Park and Rec minutes about how they reacted to, recreational space for this plan. What's the idea about that?
There's no active recreation, it's just passive open space.
But the other groups have put in some sort of a amenity or a park open area or something. Most of them are trying to do something to create some amenity for their people. Will that be left to the HOA?
It can be, in this case.
So the
There
park,
will be an HOA.
okay, so the Park and Rec Board didn't really weigh in on this plan.
No. They don't weigh in on these types of things.
Which ones do they weigh in on?
Conventional half-acre plans.
I don't need to tell you that I don't like these plans. I think they're creating an issue, a sort of a neighborhood that looks like you might as well be in the city. And I just think they're really affecting the aesthetic of the township. And I'm getting feedback from other people who feel the same way. So maybe a zoning hearing, a zoning meeting would be helpful.
Anything else? Okay, moved, seconded, in favor?
Aye.
Aye, reluctantly.
Okay. Authorize appropriate township official to execute memorandum of understanding with Peters Township Sanitary Authority for extension of sanitary sewer line.
So the sanitary sewer line that will service Rolling Hills Park, the connection needs to be made here in the vicinity of Clubside Drive and Fairway Drive. When these roads were taken over, and these were all at one point in time private roads, this spur was not. And so this land has reverted back to these two property owners, although if you were to go down there and take a look, can you go to the next slide? This is what you would see. It almost looks like a stone roadway going back there. So since the sewer line that comes from the intersection up to our property will be eventually owned by the Peters Township Sanitary Authority, we made a decision to work with them to acquire this easement and to get it in a form that is acceptable to them. So what this memorandum of understanding does is spells out each of our roles. And quite honestly, and we knew this from day one, the township's going to assume the cost and expense of being able to do this in the construction. In fact, the extension is part of the Rolling Hills project that is under construction right now. But there are going to be some legal expenses, and there's going to be some improvements that are done down here. We're taking out a whole row of shrubs or trees that can't be replaced because they'll be in the easement. We're going to replace that with a privacy fence. But these people have been fairly cooperative in terms of moving ahead with this. But this is an agreement between us and the Sanitary Authority.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the appropriate township officials to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Peters Township Sanitary Authority for the extension of a sanitary sewer line servicing Rolling Hills Park.
I'll second. Any other discussion?
Has the solicitor reviewed this?
If you want to make that, I do not believe he has. If you want to make it contingent upon him reviewing it, I don't have a problem with that. It's really straightforward.
Would you mind that friendly amendment?
I'm glad to make that friendly amendment, Mr. Arcuri.
Thank you.
And I'll second the friendly amendment.
Friendly second. Okay, in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Authorize appropriate township official to execute memorandum of understanding with Construction General Labor and Material Handlers Union 1058 for the purpose of voluntary early retirement incentive program.
So as we have discussed before, the 2021 budget includes an appropriation for the purposes of funding the voluntary early retirement incentive program for the representative members of the Peters Township Public Works Department. This memorandum of understanding is an agreement between us and local 1058. To be able to institute this kind of program is subject to collective bargaining, and so therefore we need a memorandum of understanding to allow us to initiate that. The union, as of last Friday, has indicated that they are prepared to sign this agreement, and it's my recommendation that council authorize the appropriate official to execute it on behalf of the township.
And there's only 4 people that would qualify for this, correct?
We have an appropriation of $100,000, and at most it will be 4 people. As of right now, I think it's going to be less than 4.
I'll make a motion that that we authorize the appropriate township officials to execute the memorandum, whatever it's called, of understanding with Construction General Labor's Material Handles, Local Union 1058, for the purpose of a voluntary retirement, early retirement incentive program.
Second?
Other discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, award of a contract for the design of the fire department substation.
So on January 22nd, the township received 16 proposals for architectural services to design the new substation to be located at 435 Beemont Road. These proposals were reviewed by Mr. Jaworski, Deputy Chief Caputo, Chief McLaughlin, and myself for the purposes of creating a short list. And from that, there were 5 firms that we believe distinguished themselves and were later interviewed. On February 11th, we conducted an interview over Zoom, and Chief McLaughlin and the Deputy Chief, as well as Assistant Fire Chief Gaughan, Ryan, and myself conducted those interviews. And based upon that, it was the consensus of the group that both Design Stream LLC and EPM Architects were the best qualified to undertake the project. Now, both of these are small firms, and both of them intend to use Gateway Engineers for their civil engineering component. EPM's proposed fee is $6,000 less than that of Design Stream, but quite frankly, when the project's costing around $250, in my mind, you know, that difference is not a decision maker. The thing that I think, and I'll let Chief McLaughlin address this himself, but I think the thing that distinguished their proposal is the number of fire stations that they have done. Both firms, when we check references, got good references. EPM's intends to use Tower Engineering for its mechanical systems. We've had a lot of luck using Tower on other projects. The principal at EPM is actually a firefighter himself and is very conversant with NFPA standards and speaks the language of the fire department. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lauer. Yes, the evaluation process went very, very well, and I do want to stress the fact that both firms came down to almost exactly even. They were very highly regarded by all of the references, and we even went beyond to check some of the references that weren't listed, all of which had excellent things to say about both. When it came to distinguishing one or the other, we had joked it could come down to a coin flip. It was that close. So we went and we kind of nitpicked everything that we possibly could, and those were 4 distinguishing factors that brought EPM a little closer to us than Design Stream did.
What did these other firms that you interviewed, what was their price? Do we know, Mr. Lauer?
Well, we do know that, but I don't have them sitting in front of me. But these prices were representative of the prices we got from other firms. I don't know. Ryan might be.
There was a glut of firms that were in about the 230 to 260 range. That was sort of the medium where you got 9 to 10 of the firms that submitted applications.
So that was based on the 5 that you narrowed down, or was that?
No, I'm talking about where, like, if we had 16 firms, there were about 10 of them that were in the 230 to 260 range. Then you had ones that were higher and some that were lower. So if you're looking at the median, there was about 10 of them that were right in range with where these 2 are. Okay. And pretty much all 5 firms we interviewed were in that range.
And what kind of criteria did you use based on, it says firms were chosen for interviews, wait a second, you knocked them down to a short list. What type of criteria did you use to knock them down to a short list? I mean, well, I understand that if they've done that kind of work in the past, but, you know, we don't know any of that. I mean, at least I don't know what you did, what you looked at, and I mean, maybe out of the ones you didn't include, there were qualified people. I mean, I know we have to defer to your judgment and your discretion, but, I think if you're going to spend $250,000, that I think there should be more transparency to the board. Because I don't think, having done a bunch of these, that's great, but I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't do it if you've never, if you've only done a few, or, and it's engineering work. I mean, am I wrong, or am I the engineer?
I've got a bunch of questions too, what is the basis of the structure of the fee? Typically, it's done as a percentage of the cost of construction,
These are lump sums.
and why is it that you are speculating of the $250,000 that you don't think you'll spend more than $175,000?
Oh, no, you're misreading it. What I'm saying is, I don't think we're going
It
to
certainly
spend
looks
more
like
than
what I read.
175 in 2021. You will spend this entire amount for this project. This project is not intended to be constructed until next year. So what we're trying to do is move this project along so that, in fact, we're in a position come the fall to have a good budget number. And then complete design, and so that we can build this next year using the entire construction season. I'm not saying that it's 175. I'm saying that it's 200 and.
A portion of that is for construction administration.
Right.
What the architectural firm will do in meetings and making sure that the building's up to their compliance. So that won't be expended until the construction phase of the
And we
building.
won't spend all the design money this year either, because we won't move the project.
Frank, are you suggesting that we actually maybe ask that the two firms come in and present in front of us, and we participate in the decision? In some respects, I think that's what we have done in a lot of other cases.
Well, I think that when you're going to start doing a short list, I don't think, I think maybe, at least going forward, somebody from council should be sitting on that, whatever committee it is that you guys get together and do. There's absolutely no transparency here. I don't know who you eliminated and why, and, what credentials they all have. I trust you. But we're talking about spending $250,000.
But I can tell you this: we're not on a tight time frame here, and if it will help you, I have no problem going back and pulling out those proposals and giving you a report that evaluates each of them. I don't have a problem doing that. It's going to take a little time, but that's not a problem.
Am I wrong, or
Well, one of
we've
the
done
things-
this before like this?
To your point, Frank, I think one of the things that concerned me, and full disclosure, I know Mr. Turkle from Design Stream. When I worked at Pittsburgh Mercy, he did work for them 16, 18 years ago. But I'm not worried about him particularly, but I'm worried about the process, because I know that in reading the docket, you talked about going back and asking them to reduce their prices. You tried to get, and I appreciate that you did, try to get them to reduce their prices.
Well, no, we
you
did
do
not
that?
go back to ask them to reduce their prices. What we asked them to do is, after we did the interviews,
Okay.
and it was clear that people viewed this project slightly different in terms of what the end product would be. And
From the architect's perspective?
From the architect's perspective. So, we had this discussion where we engaged them in what we thought it was going to be. And when it became clear that these two firms were the two that we thought were equally qualified, what we asked them to do was, based upon our conversation, do you want an opportunity to amend your proposal in terms of your fee, as opposed to going in saying your fee's too high, you need to reduce it.
Okay. But I guess my question about that is, so you came down to these two. Would that have been something that you could have done with more than just two of them? And was the timing appropriate? That was one of my only questions, because I couldn't read from the docket how that sequence of events had occurred, and whether both of them had in fact had the opportunity to redesign or
Yes.
rejigger their numbers.
Both of them were asked to do that at the same time.
In going through the proposals, we went through and we looked at what the architects had envisioned for the size of this project too, and there was some disparity between the square footage of the building, what the building would include, and things of that nature. So when we came down, especially to the final 2 firms out of the 5, there was probably about a 3,000 square foot difference in the size of the 2 buildings, or in the size of the buildings that each firm had looked at.
That's a lot.
Isn't that something you guys should be specifying?
Yeah, shouldn't that be?
I mean,
Well-
that's the problem that I have with this, besides a lack of information, is going back to what I've been requesting ad nauseam. I don't think you guys know how you're going to run this thing. Like, we asked for a strategic plan over and over. We got a PowerPoint that says what trucks are going to be in the stations, how many people, but I have no idea how you plan to use this operationally. And I think it probably showed what we're seeing here in this docket.
Well, the square footage different was surprising to me, too.
I'm going to disagree that we haven't told you how the station's going to be used.
Well, I think you gave us, and I agree that you gave us information about number of people, number of trucks, and things
Right.
of that nature. You know, this is a satellite station. It doesn't, in my opinion, need to have all the amenities that the main station has. You don't need all the training space, meeting room space. I mean, obviously, they'll be doing training to some degree out there, but I think, I want this built very much, because this side of the township does not have the response time they need to have. That being said, I don't want to overbuild it. I've told you that on a number of occasions, that I think we need to build what we need, not what we might be dreaming about. So that's all I'm concerned about. And the square footage difference threw me a little bit, because I didn't know what was said to one and not to the other that made that 3,000 square feet is a big difference.
We had a pre-construct, or not a pre-construction, but a
We had a
pre-bid meeting.
pre-bid meeting, and I think it was pretty clear in that meeting that was, in terms of size, what we were looking for, and the fact that this was going to be a
What are you looking
substation,
for?
was on a main, what's that?
What's the square footage you want to look
Well, that, we did not give them a square footage, because I think that is actually something that needs to come from the architect. I think what you want to do with the architect is to explain the nature of the use, and depending on how they meet that need, it could be different in terms of the amount of square feet that you end up with.
And I think I've seen that happen, I agree. But tell me this, the other thing I wondered about, there's an existing building there, and at one point in time, we talked about remodeling the building versus demolishing. What does this represent?
This represents demolishing the building and building the new building. That building that's down there now cannot be used for this purpose.
Well, it was a question, because
Yeah.
at one point that was kind of on the table.
But I hear what Mr. Curry's asking. We don't have a problem with that. You can table these. We will give you a much more detailed report so that council's in a better position to move forward.
I move to table.
Second.
I'll second, but I have one question before we do. And one thing I'm still confused about, Chief, is once the station is built, how are you going to allocate apparatus? Like, so if a call comes, let's say there's a fire call that comes in on Valley Brook Road, which station are you sending the truck out of? Is it going to depend on where on Valley Brook Road the fire is, or?
Yes. We'll realign the districts. Right now, we have a District 1 and a District 2. The district line separates along Valley Brook Road and on this side, so the waters would be in District 2, and everything on that side is District 1. We would realign that district line to basically put not only road miles, but response times in there as well. We touched briefly on this when we had the council workshop. I think it was in 2019 is when we started doing that. But realigning that district line and also specifying what trucks would go to which calls. Obviously, any type of structural call in nature, a large accident, both trucks or both stations are going to respond to that. As far as apparatus goes, that's something we also had discussed as well. The initial thought is, instead of buying another apparatus and adding another 6 large apparatus to our current fleet, we would take the 5 that we currently have and reallocate them as such. The only minimum downside of this is you have a little more wear and tear on the 5 that you currently have. But if we brought them within the replacement schedule that was somewhat, loosely agreed upon before, but the 15 to 17 year mark, you'll turn them around in a time where you're still getting a return on your investment and not putting the vehicle out the pasture and getting $2,500 for it like we did the last one.
All right.
I hope that also when you give us that information, I do have interest in what Mr. Stiebel said about understanding operationally what happens with this space. I'm not a fireman. I don't understand how that space is going to be used, and I'd like to understand that.
Sure, I'll pull up the presentations that
Okay.
we submitted.
Well, don't regurgitate the presentation.
No.
I think what we're saying is that's not sufficient. It needs to be more than that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So, but you've got two architects who are given the same specs, and they come in with proposals that are that divergent in square footage. That just makes no sense to me. I mean, depending, I mean, you
If you look
can...
at all 16, it was even more over the board. So when you look at a designer and say, this particular designer, take EPM, for example, has constructed 3 fire stations since 2010. He's taken the needs that department has had and said, okay, based upon this, if 10 firefighters are going to respond out of this station, you're only going to need about a 6,000 square foot building, versus another one that had designed the same response area, the same kind of thing, and said, well, I think you're going to need 10,000 square feet, so on and so forth. You look at like Upper St. Clair's Fire Station, one of the designers did take care of that, but is there a little bit of extra fluff in that station?
A little.
Absolutely. Absolutely there is.
I understand different architects having a different perspective of how space would be used or how much space would be needed for a particular function. I get that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that 2 or 3 different people don't come in with exactly the same number, but when you have a 3,000 square foot difference or however much it was, just give us an idea that, okay, one guy didn't include an entirely additional function or something. That's
Right, and taking that, of which 3,500 square feet, about that is used just simply for the apparatus bay.
Yeah,
Leaving, and that was generally what each architect had come back with. The apparatus bays were almost identical in size, but it's everything in addition to that, to what they were building, from a second floor to having a hose tower to dry hose on, anything like that. We looked at in these proposals to eliminate. When we took the 16 proposals, we looked at anything from distance to where they were relative in geography to experience recently with fire buildings, but not only that, with public buildings and going through the public bidding process, which is obviously quite cumbersome at times for architects and so forth. So we can take that, Ryan, I think we made a whole bunch of notes when we were going through that, and we can...
Spreadsheet set up.
Yep.
That's not a
Got
problem.
it.
I think you understand what we are looking for.
Okay.
So we need to vote on that?
Good.
Just the
Table.
We did vote to table, so in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Pre-qualification for general contractor for Rolling Hills Aquatic Center.
At the February 8th, 2021 meeting of council, council authorized staff to solicit for pre-qualification of general contractors to potentially construct an aquatics facility at Rolling Hills Park. The township advertised to receive pre-qualifications by March 1st, 2021. The following 8 contractors submitted applications, and they include Allegheny Construction, Hudson Group, Ascites, Nello Construction, P.J. Dick, R.A. Glancy and Sons, Rycon Construction, and Vendrick Construction. 5 of the firms met the standards that were established for pre-qualifications, including P.J. Dick, the Hudson Group, Ascites Construction, the Rycon Group, and the Nello Construction Company. I don't know whether Ryan handled a lot of this. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Ryan.
No, I would just say, given their backgrounds, many of them have extensive backgrounds in building public structures, well over $10 million. As the general contractor, they oversee all the subs on this project, serve as the project manager in many ways, including a list of pre-qualified pool contractors. So I think that's pretty much all I have, unless there's any questions specifically.
I'll make a motion that we pre-qualify P.J. Dick Incorporated, Hudson Group Incorporated, Mercedes Construction Company, Rycon Construction, Inc., and Nello Construction Company to serve as general contractors for the construction of the Rolling Hills Park Aquatic Center, and therefore render them eligible to submit bids.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'll bring up my point that was made already, that we don't have enough information to proceed with this aspect of the project. We were just given a rolled-up set of drawings that has inside it some operating information.
Yes, I wanted to
Which
talk about
is-
that, and I wanted to talk about this as well.
Which is inadequate, but that's okay. Go ahead.
This was the schedule that was presented back in February, and so this, March 8th was the date designated to undertake this. The permits has been filed with the Washington Conservation District. I don't know whether April 1st is going to be the date we actually receive approval of that. The ENS controls are actually, on this project, are actually fairly straightforward, so that may well be possible. If it is, we'll be coming back to you for that change order to do the earthwork that we had discussed previously, and we'll be doing that in early April. And where these pre-qualified, these bidders are pre-qualified, we're going to actually go through the process of soliciting bids, and that's not going to occur until April. So, but what you do have tonight is I wanted to. This is the latest set of drawings on the pool, and you can take those with you and review them. There's also in there a spreadsheet that describes projected revenues and expenditures for the pool. One of the things that you'll see in that report from Ballard King, because I do believe we have to get a handle on how it is we would manage this facility if in fact it gets built. Ballard King suggests that there's a continuum from the township actually undertaking the management of this pool on its own towards hiring a third-party consultant who could administer the entire operations. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of room in between. We have begun to have discussions with at least one vendor who does pool maintenance. They do currently in our area at Dormont in Robinson Township, but they are a national firm that manages not only community pools but pools at resorts. We're going to invite them to come in to talk to council to understand what they do and on what basis that they do that. I do believe at the very least if we move ahead with the pool, we are going to need some assistance in management. The number of lifeguards alone that you would be hiring would dwarf anything that we normally do in terms of seasonal hiring, and it would be a lot, I think it would make a whole lot more sense rather than to take on that task ourselves, is to contract that out to somebody else. The fact of the matter is, we have 80, I think it's 84 full-time employees right now. We issue about 150 W-2s each year. If you talk to, and again, I know I always reference Cranberry, but it's the only pool in the area that is similar to what we're talking about building. They issue 150 W-2s for their pool operation alone. And we're just not situated that we can, or have the back office support that we can hire 150 seasonal employees, let alone process them through payroll. So in the near future, we're going to have a workshop where we're going to discuss all
Well,
that.
when we were talking about this a couple of years ago, there were at least one or two major commercial pool operations that were being talked about. One of which was, I believe, at South Hills Village. There was going to be a club and a pool.
I think that's all fallen through.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't heard about any of them lately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those have fallen through.
Because they can't make money?
Right.
Oh, I think they have fallen through because of the economy over the last year. I don't think you're going to see commercial construction like that. So.
And these, Kimmel Bograd was basing their projections on a world that didn't have a pandemic.
Oh, and I think those projections they have there are do not assume that there's a pandemic. I would agree with you.
But in the body, but I'm saying to you, in the body of their documentation, it's not clear to me they're speculating on past history before we had the pandemic.
Yes.
So we don't know what's going to happen as far as revenue. And I'm looking at here at this one document, it looks like $422,000 for a year added on to our existing budget for 3 months. This is a 3-month, well, I guess
Well-
not, because they have to maintain it around year-round, but that's primarily
Yes.
for the staff.
Yes.
I mean, I personally, I think that this information, is a little late. I think we need to talk more about this, because we haven't voted to approve this project yet.
No, we have not. No, we have not.
Okay, anything else on that? All right,
I think we have to take a
Did
vote.
we vote that?
yeah.
We didn't vote.
vote
We
on
didn't-
that.
we didn't
Okay,
vote.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Special permit request by Giant Eagle.
Giant Eagle's withdrawn their request for that permit.
Okey-dokey, payroll and bill.
Well, Mr. Chairman, accounts payable for this 2-week period was $903,000 plus what we set aside tonight, so that's another 40. Total payroll expenses was $320,000. And then there's also a credit card statement with the docket for $15,650. As far as I can tell, the accounts payable and payroll are good. Mr. Jarowski assures me they all have backup for all the credit card stuff, so I'll move to approve, pending any questions from council.
I'll second.
Discussion. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, correspondence, I see none. Anybody want to discuss any of the minutes? Okay, moving on to miscellaneous.
I just wanted to bring you up to date. We have a project, one of the things we've been doing with the parks, when the last master plan was done, one of the deficiencies that was pointed out was sufficient ADA access to our facilities. And we've been making real progress towards completing those. One of the parks where there is a problem is down here at Venetia Park. We have received community development block grant money through Washington County. That project has been bid, and construction of that will be occurring shortly. And it's kind of a partnership with them. The administration of the contract's actually going to occur down there. One of the things that we were able to do was, in addition to providing access and ADA compliant pads for bleachers, there's sufficient money that they're going to be doing renovations inside the restroom to upgrade the facilities there. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Anything else? Okay. Items for next agenda.
I have a question about our liability for personnel paid time off. We've had a few staff members leave, and we've paid out PTO time, whatever they have left over. We're going to be potentially offering early retirement to some public works people. I know that you say we fund this and
Yes,
that
we
we're
do.
covered with that, but I just wondered, have you ever done a report annually to say how much that we've actually done that? I know it's been kind of a different year with people coming and going, but I'd be interested to know what the average amount of time people haven't used that we pay when they leave.
Okay, we can do that because
I
there's.
mean, it's not an immediate
Oh,
question,
no,
it's just,
but it's relatively easy to do because it's pretty well capped. And so it should be easy to.
well, and I guess what I'm wondering is are people continually at their cap and we always pay out that big amount, or, I just want to.
Depends on the person. Depends on the person.
It's something that I'm interested in. If
Okay.
the other people aren't, you can just share
Yeah.
with me.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for next agenda items? All righty, seeing none, then we are adjourned. We have an executive session.
Brief executive session.